The story begins with Jason, a professional hitman. He parks his car outside the mansion of Hans Morris, the president of a multi-billion-dollar toy company and his next target. At that moment, Morris is inside a storage room, searching through shelves packed with toys until he finds what he has been looking for, a green fairy. He then takes it to his study and stands by the window. From outside, Jason watches him and prepares to make his move. First, he loads his pistol and puts on a mask to keep the security cameras from capturing his face. He then uses a cell phone as a decoy to distract the guard at the front gate. The phone starts a countdown, and the alarmed guard rushes outside to get rid of it. Seizing the opportunity, Jason intercepts him and shoots him. Thanks to the suppressor, the gunshot goes unnoticed, and Morris remains completely unaware. After eliminating the guard, Jason takes the keys from his uniform and easily gains access to the security room. There, he disables the surveillance cameras, confidently removes his mask, and heads toward the study. On the way, he runs into another guard and kills him without much effort. He finally enters the room and shoots Morris twice in the chest and once in the forehead. Once he confirms that Morris is dead, he picks up the green fairy he noticed earlier and decides to keep it as a souvenir. He also notices a photograph of Morris's mother on the desk, with a handwritten note signed by her beneath it. Without giving it much thought, he leaves the mansion. The next scene shows Jason on a plane heading back home. During the flight, he informs his client that the job was successful and enjoys the rest of the trip in peace. At one point, the woman sitting next to him asks if she can have a piece of gum. When he opens his bag to hand her one, she notices the toy fairy and finds it odd that a grown man is carrying something like that, though she chooses not to say anything. After landing, Jason discovers that news of Morris's murder has already spread across the country. As he leaves the airport, he notices a little girl carrying a doll similar to the one he saw in Morris's study. He pays no attention to it until something even stranger happens. When he arrives at his apartment building, he spots a small green toy sitting on the reception desk. What unsettles him is how closely it resembles the one that had been on Morris's desk before he died. Once inside his penthouse, Jason places the green fairy in a display case where he keeps souvenirs from people he has killed, including cash, pens, glasses, and other personal belongings. Later, he falls asleep on the couch while replying to emails. In the middle of the night, the doorbell wakes him up. Surprised by the late hour, he checks the security camera before answering the door. Outside, he sees the receptionist holding a package. When no one responds, she simply leaves it on the floor and walks away. Jason brings the package inside and sets it on the kitchen counter. The note is addressed to him, but it doesn't say who sent it. It does, however, bear a signature that looks strangely familiar. It closely matches the signature of Morris's mother that he saw beside the photograph on the night of the assassination. Although he considers throwing the package away unopened, his curiosity gets the better of him. After removing the wrapping, he discovers that it was sent by Morris's company and promises a few extra surprises. Before touching anything, he carefully inspects the contents to make sure it isn't a trap. Finding nothing suspicious, he opens it and discovers plastic soldiers, toy guns, and miniature tanks. He even picks up one of the toys to examine it more closely, but everything seems perfectly normal. A short while later, the box suddenly falls off the kitchen counter on its own. Jason is certain he didn't leave it near the edge, so he walks over to see what happened. To his surprise, the toy soldiers that were inside have vanished. From that moment on, increasingly strange things begin happening throughout the apartment. The curtains begin moving on their own, the lights suddenly go out, and when Jason checks what is happening, he discovers that someone has cut the lighting cable. Moments later, a soldier hiding beneath a table stabs him in the toes with a tiny sharpened weapon. At that point, Jason has no doubt that the toy soldiers from the package are behind everything that's happening. As he crouches down to inspect the area, the tiny soldiers open fire on him. Although the bullets barely hurt him, the attack leaves him stunned. A moment later, they launch an explosive shell that sets his pants on fire. Jason quickly realizes that the soldiers may be small, but they are extremely dangerous. As they continue shooting, he runs into the bathroom and locks himself inside. There, he discovers that his knee has been badly injured and that several bullets are embedded in his skin. Using a handheld mirror, he looks into the living room and sees the soldiers shooting out the light bulbs to plunge the apartment into darkness. When they spot him, they fire a cannonball that shatters the mirror. Shaken, Jason slips out through the other door, enters his bedroom, and grabs his pistol. He then heads to the kitchen, pulls a rifle from one of the cabinets, and starts firing across the room. Suddenly, everything goes quiet as the frightened soldiers retreat. Taking advantage of the silence, he moves the couch cushions to eliminate their hiding spots. He then flips the couch over and finds several dead soldiers underneath it. The survivors gather up their fallen comrades and load them into a tiny jeep. Jason watches the scene in disbelief. As they try to escape, he crushes as many of them as he can under his feet. A few continue shooting at him, but he discovers that even the vibration from a single bullet is enough to knock them unconscious. The attack is far from over. 3 toy helicopters emerge from beneath a table and fly straight toward him. One fires a cannonball that he narrowly dodges, but they immediately begin launching missiles at him. Jason rushes into his bedroom and locks the door. Standing in front of the mirror, he examines the cuts and bruises on his face, pours rubbing alcohol over the wounds, and wraps them as best he can. A short time later, a massive metal ball smashes through the bathroom door, blasting a hole straight through it. One of the helicopters flies into the room and continues its assault. Fed up with the situation, Jason catches it in a towel and slams it into the floor. He then throws the wreckage into the toilet. When the soldiers survive the impact and refuse to surrender, he drops a plugged-in hairdryer into the water, finally killing them. Convinced that it is the safest place in the apartment, Jason decides to spend the rest of the night there. While he waits, he stitches up a wound on his thigh, enduring the pain as best he can. Hours later, a soldier slides a note under the bathroom door, asking him to surrender. Surprised by the intelligence of these tiny creatures, Jason writes a reply. However, when he tries to slide the note back, he realizes it was all a trap. Several soldiers and a group of tanks are waiting on the other side. The moment he approaches, they open fire, riddling the door with holes and leaving him completely exposed. To save himself, Jason climbs out the window and carefully makes his way along the outside ledge of the building, 14 stories above the ground. He manages to reach a nearby balcony, but another helicopter appears and immediately attacks him. Just as he's about to fall to his death, he fires a single shot and brings it down. Back on the balcony, he lets out a sigh of relief. That relief doesn't last long. He discovers that several soldiers have positioned a cannon aimed directly at the window, waiting for him to return. After thinking for a moment, he uses a rubber duck from the pool to distract them, then attacks from another angle with a fire extinguisher. Meanwhile, another squad of soldiers arrives in a tiny jeep and begins surrounding him while firing non-stop. Jason quickly improvises a flamethrower using a lighter and an aerosol can, burning his attackers alive. He then grabs a knife and tears their tiny bodies apart, blinded by rage. Finally, he returns to the other group and crushes them beneath a heavy box. At last, all of the soldiers appear to have been destroyed. Jason inspects the piles of burned plastic, moving the remains around to make sure none of them are still alive. He then counts the bodies and compares the total to the number printed on the box. When the numbers match, he finally breathes a sigh of relief. What he fails to consider is the extra surprise mentioned on the back of the package. Trying to unwind after everything he's been through, Jason grabs a drink and gets into the pool. Suddenly, something slices his wrist from beneath the water. He immediately climbs out and discovers that the wound is deep enough to require stitches. Without wasting any time, he grabs a needle and thread and stitches the cut himself as best he can. Convinced that there may still be soldiers hiding somewhere in the penthouse, Jason decides to leave. What he doesn't realize is that the real threat has followed him. As he rides down in the elevator, the lights suddenly go out, and the control panel stops working, preventing him from opening the doors whenever he wants. Using a flashlight, he carefully searches the elevator but finds nothing. When the lights flicker back on, he spots a lone toy commando inside. The tiny soldier escapes through an opening in the ceiling. Jason tries to follow him, only to discover that the elevator has become stuck, leaving him with no way out. As a last resort, he jumps onto the roof of the neighboring elevator, removes a ceiling panel, and climbs inside, convinced that he is finally safe. His relief doesn't last long, but Commando has managed to follow him there as well. Armed with a knife, the tiny soldier repeatedly stabs Jason. Even so, because of their size difference, the attacks barely injure him. Eventually, Jason catches the Commando and wedges him between the elevator doors. When the doors close, they crush the toy's head, killing him once and for all. Jason smiles as he looks at the headless body, believing that everything is finally over. Moments later, however, he realizes that the Commando is connected to an explosive device. Seconds later, the bomb detonates, killing both of them. In the final scene, a sticker on the toy box reveals that the package included a commando and a thermonuclear weapon as bonus gifts. Elsewhere, the green fairy Jason stole begins to move on its own. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know what you think about this movie.